Today we're going to discuss why you need a sacrificial fence for your table saw. And not only that, we're going to make one. And we're going to make one that a feather board can attach to. And that's one of the reasons why you would want a sacrificial fence, is to attach your feather board to. And the second is if you run your blade really close to the fence, per se you're cutting dados or something like that, then you would also want a sacrificial fence so that you don't tear up your fence that belongs on the saw. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dierdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's get started. I have a scrap piece of pine 1x material here. This is 5 inches wide, probably started life as a 1x6, but it got ripped down a little bit at one point in time, and it's just a piece of leftover material that I'm going to use for this sacrificial fence. So, you know, 1x6 would work just fine for what you're doing, but you need something a little taller so that you have the ability to clamp the feather board to it. The first thing we're going to do is measure the length of our fence, and we're going to cut that 1x down to that length. Now we don't want to cover up any of this section of the fence, we just want to go right to this outside edge. So we're looking at 25.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and rip this down to 25.5. So now that I've got it cut down, I just want to scribe a line across the top of my fence on both sides. Now what I want to do is just line it up here on the back side of the fence. I'm going to move the fence over to the other side so that we can see things just a little bit better. I have the sacrificial fence clamped to my fence with just a couple of bar clamps here, and they're you can actually just clamp it on this way, but it limits the thickness of the material that you can get underneath of it. So 3/4 would be about the thickest that you could get underneath of it. And I've raised my blade up to approximately 3/4 of an inch. My feather board is about a 1/2 inch away from the front side of my blade, and I just want to scribe a line here. Now I'm going to go ahead and raise the blade up all the way and do the same thing, set it at about a 1/2 inch away from the blade, and we will scribe the next line. So as you can see, here's the line that I just scribed. That moved my feather board back considerably. Not that I would probably ever use the blade this high, but irregardless, I want that material here just in case it does arise. Now I'm going to just go ahead and scribe a line back here, just like that. So now I've got my line. All of this material will get cut away. This will stay. Now what I want to do is, because you know, it is a sacrificial fence, but I can use both sides of it. So I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side, so that when I wear this side out, I can just flip it around and still be able to attach my feather board to it. So then the same thing here. This material will get cut away, and some of this. To approximately in here. now that it's all cut out, I'm going to measure in 2 inches from this side and 2 inches from the other side and 3/8 of an inch to the center of this board, and I'm going to drill a 3/8 hole. In the past, I've always used my bar clamps to hold this on, the sacrificial fence onto my fence, and I've run into some problems with the clamps getting in my way. So I've decided to pick up a couple of these clamps. Then they are fence clamps and they work very nicely. They were 18 bucks or something like that on Amazon. So that's why I'm going to drill the holes in, and then these clamps will hold this to my fence. As you're drilling, just drill them deep enough so that the clamp will set all the way in and you're golden. The holes are drilled and it's sanded, and I've got it clamped onto the fence, and you can see these clamps are very nice. They'll never get in your way of anything you're trying to cut as far as height is concerned, and they hold it very nicely to it. So the next thing I want to do is relieve the sacrificial fence for the blade. So I've got the blade raised up to about 3/4 of an inch. So I want to go to about right here and no higher. I might even stay a little bit lower than that, somewhere around a 1/2 inch. I've removed my riving knife and lowered my blade all the way down, and I've got the sacrificial fence set over the top of the blade about 3/4 of the way. And what I want to do is turn on my table saw and raise my blade up, and I am going to keep it at a 1/2 inch. If anything, if I ever need to get into anything thicker than that, I'll always just adjust the thickness of this, but for right now I'm planning on working with some 3/4 material, so I still want it to have something to slide on here and not to like try and fall into a notch that I've cut out of the sacrificial fence. So I'm just going to go a 1/2 inch. Now I'm just going to bump it over a little bit and do that again. Probably another 1/2 blade width. The reason we want to do that is 99% of the time the reason you're using a sacrificial fence is to get material right on the edge of your blade. And this saves your fence from your blade rubbing on the side of your fence and ruining it. But if the blade just rubs on the side of the wood, it can cause a lot of heat and distortion. The blade may even start to do some funny stuff because it's just collecting too much heat. So by cutting this little relief notch in here, when you move your blade about 1/2 under, it is actually not touching any wood with the side of the blade, and it's just clearanced very nicely. And if you need more, it's easy enough to just, bump it in and take a little more out, or if you need it deeper. That's why I made it two-sided. I can maybe do something different with the other side. But right now I'm not going to cut anything in it. I'm just going to use this side. One reason for the sacrificial fence is to attach a featherboard, and as you can see, I've got it attached with my bar clamps. It's how I would always do it, and it's clamped right to the back. And then here is the extra that I left so that I can move this back according to blade height. So I have plenty of clamping room for the feather board. The feather board helps to make this table saw a safer table saw. And you can buy a feather board if you want to. It only takes a few minutes to make one. A video a few weeks ago that I did, I made these. You can go to my playlist, look under table saws, and you'll find this these feather boards being made. So this would be one reason for using a sacrificial fence, and probably the most important, because you can pull the board out sideways like this. You can slide it under very nicely, but to pull it backwards, it's just not happening. I mean, I'm tugging on this thing really hard. It is just not coming backwards. And for kickback, that is a beautiful thing. Now, once you feed it through the blade and you're past the feather board, then, you know, the kickback is something that could, but rarely ever would happen. And I would really only use this feather board if I was cutting thinner strips like this, 1 inch wide, 1.5, 2 inches, something like that, is when I would get this feather board on here. The second reason we would want a sacrificial fence is for the dado blade. Now this is what I would use this sacrificial fence for the most, and that is basically to make shiplap, any lap joints, anything like that. When your dado set is in, you do not run your riving knife. And this is a homemade throat plate that I made for my dado blade. Now everybody's table saw is different. In my particular case, this is a 1/4 inch piece of Luan or subflooring, and it worked perfect in the place of my throat plate. And as you can see, I've set the blade up so that it is back behind just a little bit so that it will cut clean and cut straight across. Let's run a little piece of wood through and have a look. So as you can see, that little bit of lip that I cut underneath that sacrificial fence keeps this edge very nice and clean. There's no buildup there. There's no nothing there. That is a very, very nice dado cut. It's very clean all the way through. And that sacrificial fence will help you do that. Alright guys, that's all we got for this time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Build your sacrificial fence. Get your feather boards mounted to it. Get your little tabs on here to do so. Get your clamps to hold it so that it stays out of the way, and you can run through whatever material that you want to run through. Remember guys, always stay safe using your power tools. Respect the power of your power tools. Never become complacent with them. They can bite you. They bit me. And it's just something that I've learned to live with and figure out ways to be safer using a table saw. It wasn't the table saw's fault, it was mine. This is the same saw that bit me. And I respect this saw and I use it a lot. So just stay safe. That's all we got. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those 2 videos right there. We'll see you soon.